Hello, folks. Welcome back. It's been 8+ months since the first South African refugees landed on the shores of the United States on May 12th, 2025. And people still using their arrival for their personal gain or fame or attention seeking. Here we are, two-thirds of a year since their arrival, and people won't leave them in peace. The latest is an article that appears in Briefly, a South African online publication. It purports to be a media outlet. They're not farmers. U.S. woman takes a closer look into the 59 Afrikaner refugees. Now, if you're a serious news story, your first thing would, who is this U.S. woman taking a closer look? Is she an immigration official? Is she an attorney? Is she a human rights advocate? Is she a university lecturer? Is she an intelligence analyst? What is her background? Well, that's never really discussed here. But this article says a U.S. woman shared her research into the 59 Afrikaner refugees who arrived in America on a private jet in May 2025. Well, already we have an error here. There weren't 59 Afrikaners. There were some Afrikaners. There were some English South Africans, and there was a colored family in there. So already the facts are incorrect because they're not facts. She revealed that many are wealthy business owners, not struggling farmers in danger. The refugees got fast-tracked with no UN oversight, while other refugees with approved applications were put on hold. Now, on her TikTok video, she has text at the top says at least some of the 59 South Afrikaner refugees are not farmers. No kidding. The program isn't for farmers. How is that relevant or germane to the issue here? It's not. Of course they're not farmers. Half of them are children. She says that these people were not screened. No biometric checks. No, not these people. And again, in the video, she later claims that falsely that they weren't vetted. That's absolute nonsense. These people are thoroughly vetted. She has no idea what she's talking about. That's a false claim, and it undermines any credibility that she might possibly have. She says people who are fleeing war, persecution, and violence are people who become refugees. Well, she's correct there, and two of those apply. Persecution and violence are two of the things that the South Africans have fled. And she also appears to be somewhat of a leftist bigot who likes racist wordplay. Now, this is evident when she mentioned Charles Kleinhaus, stating that he arrived with his clan, pun intended. Wow, that's a racist trope, is it not? Interviews, background checks, biometric scans, but not these people. It happened in 3 months with no UN oversight. Folks, the United Nations does not and has never decided who comes to America. American citizens working for the U.S. government make that decision. The U.S. government does the background checks, not the UN. And the U.S. has always done that. The UN has nothing to do with it. Yes, the UN does background checks on people and they provide the information. That's one of the sources for the U.S. government, but it's not the be all end all. We do not submit our sovereignty to the United Nations. Now, according to the article, the woman explains that refugee screening is usually very strict and involves the United Nations. She's wrong. Applicants are typically people fleeing war or serious violence and must go through interviews, background checks, and biometric testing. This process usually takes 18 to 24 months. In this case, however, the group was approved in just 3 months without UN involvement. Again, the UN is not involved in the background checks. The U.S. does all of that. The U.S. does the biometric testing. They do the interviews. So that is ingermane. It's a total fabrication. This is the problem with the internet. Anybody can get on there and say anything, regardless of their experience and background, and just pontificate nonsense from their worldview. And that's what's happening here. And it's claimed that it's actually research. Now, she goes on to say that the United States takes in about 125,000 refugees each year, so spaces are limited. Well, I would say that 125,000 refugees isn't limited. In fact, it's comical. The actual data, which you'll see here on the screen, says that's not even remotely the case. So let's look at the data here. 125,000 cap every year. She's full of it. The U.S. doesn't have 125,000 cap every year. Here's the actual refugee ceiling up through 2019, research from Pew Institute. Now, in 2024, the Biden regime increased 125,000 to flood the country with more immigrants under the guise of refugees. They're actually immigrants. We know that 233,000 refugees are having their background checks rescreened because the Biden administration and the UN didn't do the job properly for many of them. So this is poppycock. Here you see it was 30,000 in 2018. 30,000 was the ceiling, not 125,000. It was 22,000 in 2018. In 2016, 54,000. In 2001, it was 27,000. It hasn't even come close to the ceiling she's talking about, 125,000, since 1990, at the end of the Cold War, when a lot of people from Eastern Europe come in the country. 1980, we took her 207,000. Of course, that's because Mariel Boatlift and things like that. So this is just nonsense. Research? There's no research here. Now, she says most refugees arrive on commercial flights and receive basic housing, job support through resettlement agencies. That's true. That's true. The 59 Afrikaners, once again, they weren't Afrikaners, however, arrived on a private jet and were welcomed by senior officials, which she says is highly unusual. Okay, first off, why do they keep calling them Afrikaners? Why does she say that? Either she's ignorant and doesn't know what an Afrikaner is and assumes being white makes you an Afrikaner, or it's an obvious racial trope to attack white South Africans of Afrikaner descent, because that's what leftists do. They presume that Afrikaners are racist because they themselves are racist, projecting their racism onto Afrikaners. So it's also highly unusual, she says, for them to arrive on a private jet. Number one, they didn't arrive on a private jet. They arrived on a charter flight. Well, it's not unusual at all. First, they did not arrive by private jet. As I said, they arrived on a charter flight. And this isn't the first time this has ever happened. There's nothing highly unusual about it at all. It's not the norm, but it's not unusual. And at the time that it occurred, I told people, don't count on that. Charter flights are emergencies or unusual circumstances, not highly unusual. I said people will come by commercial flight in future. And that's how it's happened. Now, according to her, Kleinhans, as she goes on to attack the actual refugees, claimed he was fleeing threats linked to farm attacks. He had arrived in the United States with some family members while leaving others behind. She questions how someone fearing for their life could leave a daughter and elderly mother in the same country. She also pointed out that he is not a small-scale farmer, but the owner of a large granite mining company, which he placed under his daughter's management before leaving. And her point? The statement itself makes it clear there is something wrong. Why, oh why, in the world would someone give up their comfy, wealthy life, which she seeks to paint a picture of here, to scratch out a living working for someone in the fields of the Dakotas? Her statement that he's apparently wealthy and owns a business but fled, why would you give up your business and flee to America if you have a business and it's wealthy and you're successful? Her argument is a contradiction in and of itself. She also mentioned Earl Langton, who reportedly moved to Alabama and is registered as the owner of an IT business that has been operating since 2008. He did move to Alabama. I've been there, met him, and interviewed him. I've been to his home. It's not reportedly, it's a fact. She raised concerns about someone, how they can still own and run an established business while being classified as refugee. Well, for the creator on TikTok and for the journalist, briefly, perhaps we should have asked the Jews, 95,000 German Jews who fled Germany in the late 1930s after Kristallnacht. Many of them were wealthy business owners who abandoned everything to get out safely. Many were forced to leave behind relatives who were later exterminated in the concentration camps. Perhaps we should talk to the South Vietnamese, who became boat people, desperately fleeing that country, abandoning all their wealth when the communists took over. Should they not be here because they were business owners or wealthy, connected people, but now they're destitute because of what happened to them? What an asinine argument. Wealth has nothing to do with it. She also noted the group consists of about 23 families made up of roughly 35 adults and 24 children. She said many of them came from Gauteng and Limpopo and appear to have substantial assets, which she believes added to the debate about whether they meet the criteria for refugee status. Poverty is not the status that comes into play here. You don't have to be poor to be a refugee. So how exactly does this even matter? Refugee does not equal poverty. Perhaps folks need a lesson in English. Stupid people should wear signs. The word refugee doesn't say poverty-stricken, starving, abused, fleeing conflict, persecution, or violence. She adds that some faith-based organizations refuse to help resettle groups, saying they believe the process was racially motivated and unfair to other approved refugees who remain stuck waiting. True. But the other organizations like the Episcopal Church have done so because they themselves are racist and willfully ignorant of the facts. Their refusal to provide support has harmed Black, white, and brown South African refugees who have arrived in America. Now, as if to demonstrate the lack of journalistic rigor in this silly article, the author then posts a collection of idiotic TikTok comments from leftists in South Africa, no doubt. I told you, commented, thanks for doing the research and sharing the information. What research? What information? These are uninformed opinions that are complete drivel, sprinkled with a few facts easily found in public documents. At Emancip 80, South Africa remains the most unequal country in the world. Yeah. The Gini coefficient has increased since the National Party gave up control. The ANC is put on steroids. The ANC making more rich people and more poor people, but the rich people are making are black. So it's just as bad. At Cloudic Macola joked, girl, I already made coffee. Give me some tea. Well, go spill your tea elsewhere. At No Nickname shared, thank you, beautiful lady from South Africa. Well-researched. Well-researched. No, it's not well-researched. There's no research involved here whatsoever in this TikTok video. At Amabuziza stated the private jet was even hired by the U.S. government. No, you have no evidence of that. That's a statement of, it's a lie. The charter jet was paid for by a wealthy American, not the U.S. government. The U.S. government didn't hire the charter. You know what you're talking about. And at J9, ZA gushed, well said. I'm from South Africa and I agree with you. Well, stupid people should wear signs, and all these people deserve a sign. Ladies and gentlemen, the continuing hit job by leftists in South Africa, in the media, on social media, in the government, and here in the United States by leftists to lie about and attack refugees is sad, pathetic, and disgraceful. When wealthy Venezuelans came to America after their companies were seized by a leftist government, they weren't attacked. They had lots of money. They could have gone somewhere else, but they're not attacked. That a media outlet publishes such rubbish in South Africa is not surprising. That fools listen to a TikTok video is sad, especially when they compliment the content creator on her research. And this continues, and it will continue, it never end. So for those of you who come on my program and you're reticent to do an interview about your experience, you're going to be attacked regardless, whether it's personally or as a group, because these people are evil, bigots, and racist who are stupid and uninformed about South Africa. They see white, they see racist. Why? Because they're looking in the mirror. What say you, South Africa, Mzansi? Cheers.